How's it going, guys, and welcome to my UFC 195 prediction video. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope 2016 is good to you all, and I hope 2016 is also a great year for the UFC and MMA in a whole. I hope there's some great events going to happen and some super fights, something really intriguing. And one of the fights I'm looking forward to the most on this card is actually in the prelims, the early prelims, the UFC Fight Pass prelims, and that is Dustin Poirier versus Joseph Duffy. And Dustin Poirier, really since his McGregor fight, I think he's, people know more about him, but I always classed him as like a really good fighter. And, when he was going into that fight with Conor McGregor, everyone was saying, oh, Conor will win easily and this and that, which, he did. But I remember thinking to myself, this will be a good fight. This will go at least 3 rounds, and I was surprised Conor beat him as quick as it did. I think he really got into Dustin's head, really, to be honest with you, and like calling him P-head and stuff like that. So, but this fight against Joseph Duffy is very intriguing to me. Both have got really good records. You've got to argue that Dustin Poirier's record is the better, as he has fought in the UFC and I'm sure he's fought in the WEC. Yeah, he has. So he's had so many fights in the UFC. Yeah, Dustin. I actually forgot how many he had. He's had a lot. Wow. So he's got great experience at the age of only 26, and he'll be turning 27 on January the 19th. So he's still got very young with all this experience. Joseph Duffy, on the other hand, is 27. Will be turning 28 in February of this year. Got some good wins on his belt, under his belt, beating Norman Park, Conor McGregor, Jake Lindsay, Ivan George, and he's also got, let's have a look, he's got a pretty decent boxing record. And people look at this record and say, well, he hasn't beat any well-known people, but boxing's a completely different sport, as we all know, and even the people that you haven't even heard of are still very good boxers, and they get brought into camps for people to spar with, the UFC fighters, and they give them a real good test. So that's a pretty solid record in my mind, a professional record, so it needs all the respect. So he's got good hands. He actually lost an exhibition, whatever you want to call it. I class it as you can't really class it as a professional if the rounds are different, I suppose. It depends how you look at it. But he did lose against Kyle Watson via rear naked choke. So he's lost 2 fights in his MMA career. But in the professional loss, it was against Ivan Masado, and that was via guillotine choke. I don't know if you're actually winning that fight until that choke. I don't know. But good record. In this fight, I'm definitely going with Joseph Duffy, but the only thing that's making me question that prediction is basically him being knocked out in training. I believe it said something about him having a concussion or something. I don't know if it was a concussion or just a real bad head, but he did get knocked out apparently, so I don't know if he's recovered from that. We'll see, but I'm going to go with Joseph Duffy. I'm not going to predict most of these prelim ones. Michael McDonald against Masanori Kanera. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Michael McDonald, still a young guy, only 24. Will be turning 25 this year. It seems a long time ago since we've seen him, and it was in 2013, December the 14th, against Uriah Faber. He's only lost against legit guys. Still very young. What I did hear is, he's been, putting size on. That's what I heard a good few months back, that he's, on the break, just putting size on and trying to get stronger because, Faber did manhandle him in that fight, so maybe he's just wanting to grow into his frame, get bigger, and really be stronger in there. So we'll see how he is. But this guy, Michael McDonald, so much potential, nice person as well. So I'm going to go with him in the win. Onto the main card now. Abel Trujillo against Tony Sims. I really don't know why this fight is on the main card, to be honest with you. I'd have rather had, like, say, Michael McDonald on the main card. But they would like to put some decent fights on the main event of the prelims. I don't know too much about Tony Sims, in all honesty, but I'll have to go with Abel Trujillo. He's been in some fun fights. I remember his fight against Jamie Varner. That was fucking mental. He's only lost against Tony Ferguson and Tebow and Nurmagomedov in recent years, so he can hold his own against people. So we'll see in this fight, but I'm going to go with Abel. In the featherweight division, Diego Brandao against Brian Ortega. Diego Brandao, I think he's a really good fighter, but no offense to the guy, but I think he's a little bit fucking crazy. I think he's got some issues going on. Hopefully he can calm down a bit. He's 28, so hopefully he can mature. I've seen him say some real crazy stuff in the past at the weigh-ins, saying he wanted to stab someone or kill somebody, chop their head off. I've heard a few Brazilian fighters say that in the past, that I want to chop someone's head off and put it on a stick. So fair play, whatever. The guy's got a good record since losing against Conor McGregor. He's been on a little mini winning streak against Jimmy Heads and Katsunori Kikuno, some crazy names here. He's going to be against Brian Ortega next. Let's have a look at this guy's record. 24 years old, no losses, a clean 10-0 record, winning his first 2 fights in the UFC, and he's only gone to decisions, say, 4 times. Seems to be a submission guy. I've got to go with Diego in this because I've seen more of him. But you've got to be a bit careful of these 10-0 guys when they come into the UFC. There might be something real good. So in the welterweight division, Albert Tumenov, young guy from Russia, 24-year-old. You've got to be careful of these Russian guys. Only loss in the UFC was a split decision. Looking good in recent fights. Stopping Alan Jaban, TKO, head kick and punches. That was a really, really good fight, that as well. And I like this Alan Jaban. He's a really exciting fighter. Let's have a little look. And then he's against Lorenz Larkin, welterweight division, 29-year-old, 5'11". I think his biggest sort of win was against Robbie Lawler, beating him in 2012. He's beat Chris Camozzi in the UFC, and his recent form is a 2-fight winning streak. I'm going to go with this young Russian though, Albert. He seems to have something about him. And in the co-main event of the evening, Stipe Miocic against Andrei Arlovski. Stipe, really like this guy. He's really humble, 33-year-old, 6'4", 17.25 stone, 241 pounds. In American weight, 80-inch reach, so he's a big guy, very big guy. One thing I don't like about this guy is how he moves. Love the movement he has. In his fight against Junior Dos Santos, I'm really impressed with him. I sort of thought he won that fight, but I've only watched that fight twice, so I'd have to look at it from another point of view watching it the third time. But I thought he edged that fight, and in my opinion, I thought he'd done more damage, personally. That's why I thought he won it. His fight against Mark Hunt, that were a little bit hard to watch, watching that. The referee should have stopped it, in my opinion, a lot earlier. Mark's really tough, but sometimes you need to stop a fucking fight if it's really just lopsided, in my opinion. We're not all bloodthirsty, are we? So, losing against Stefan Struve in Manchester, I remember, we were in Nottingham, I remember that in 2012. That's when Stefan was just like a bit of a beast, so big and everything like that, before he had all his heart issues. So he's got a good record in the UFC, Stipe. Andrei Arlovski, 36-year-old, he's been around for a long time. I just remember when he was huge back in the day in the UFC, coming out with his own sort of personalised entrance music, I loved it. Gotta look at that record though. I mean, he's improved so much when he, since that sort of losing skid, he was going under. He was getting knocked out, quite often, and that can be confident issues. It can be, a whole range of things. But the one thing about Andrei Arlovski, no matter who he is in there with, he is very capable of winning. People say, he's a bit chinny, but over the last sort of 2 years now, I've just realised that everyone in the UFC heavyweight division is sort of chinny because of the power that's been generated in those punches, and how small those gloves are. If someone lands one clean punch, that's it, it's good night. So since returning to the UFC, he's beaten Brendan Schaub, and that were very close. That was, you could tell Andre was very nervous in that fight. You could tell Brendan was so wary of Andre's power. It was just sort of, they cancelled each other out by not really fighting too much, you know. Andre won it in my opinion though. Antonio Silva, you know, quick knockout. Silva, I think Antonio Silva, Bigfoot, is one of those guys that definitely does need TRT because his body seems to be all messed up without it and all that sort of stuff. Travis Brown, great fight. That was maybe my favourite fight of 2015. Probably was, because my reactions while watching it was just crazy. Like, oh shit, you know, Travis hurt on Arlovski, then Arlovski hurt Travis. It was just a crazy 1 minute fight, you know, or should I say 1 round fight. And then he beat Frank Mir via decision. I personally thought Frank Mir won that fight, personally. I thought he had submission attempts. He seemed to hurt Andre. I'm sure he did. He just seemed to do a little bit more in that. I think Frank, not going off subject here, I think Frank needs to turn up in, 10 pounds lighter in my opinion, and they'll have a bit more energy. So going into this fight, you know, they've both got some good records going into the fight. I think Stipe will try and wrestle. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know if he'll try and stand up here on Andre. It's a really 50-50 fight, you know, like most fights are in the heavyweight division. But I'm going to go with Andre Arlovski. I've just got this feeling he's going to just land a big punch and finish it. I've just got that feeling. So I'm going to go with Andre Arlovski, even though I've sort of said in the past that I do think Stipe will, you know, sooner or later get a title shot. But we'll see. I'm going to go with Andre in this fight. And in the main event, Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit. This is a great fight, you know, I mean, Robbie Lawler's 33 and I'm shocked that he's only 33, you know, you'd think he were older because how long he's been around the sport. Let's have a look at his record here. You know, he's had his losses, Robbie. I think initially, when he was younger, he didn't really fight with the greatest style in the world because he was so aggressive and he seemed to be angry in the octagon, in my opinion. Sometimes midway through a fight he'd like tense up and like fucking go crazy or say something, you know. He just seemed to fight with a lot of anger, and I do remember that Joe Rogan saying that Robbie never used to warm up before fights, which is not a great idea. You know, you need that blood flowing through the muscles for you to be loose. So he's lost against some guys, you know, talented guys, bigger guys you'd have to say, you know. But since going to 170, you know, the guy is just improved so much, returning to the welterweight division. You know, beating Josh Koscheck, beating Bobby Volker, Roy McDonald, which were a crazy fight. Johnny Hendricks, that loss, you know, I think that was a really close fight, you know. I'll have to watch that again. I don't know if I thought Robbie won that. Jake Ellenberger, just a great performance that were. Matt Brown, lovely fight. I really enjoyed that fight. Johnny Hendricks, very, very close fight, but you know, Johnny weren't really pulling the trigger. Robbie had that sort of late push for the win that maybe in some people's eyes made him look like the winner. A very close fight, still a weird fight, good fight though. And then Roy McDonald, that was mental, that fight. That was just violence. That were, you know, if you're gonna look at, say, a violent fight in MMA, you definitely look at that. That were when Robbie landed that punch straight to the nose, and then Roy went to the floor and sort of just were like fucked. I was like, whoa. You know, that's sort of how Robbie likes to win his fights, but as he's getting older, and you know, all the other fights he's had, does he really want to be fighting with that style? And I think he has said in interviews in recent times that, you know, he doesn't want to really win a fight like that again. He doesn't want another war. But Carlos Condit is a sort of tailor-made guy for a war for Robbie. So will this be an entertaining fight? I actually do think it will be. But I think if Robbie can, he should definitely try and grapple Carlos. But you know, Carlos is one of those slippery sort of fish. When you grab hold, he's really hard to get hold of and everything like that. So we'll see. And he's got great movement. Carlos is 31-year-old now, 6'2", so he's really tall for the 170 division. And he's just got like a huge toolbox of moves, Carlos. That's one thing I do like about him. And he's got a good kickboxing. Well, he's got a solid kickboxing record. Anyways, I don't know if he's had any more fights than that. You know, because some of these like kickboxing fights that people have, they never get like written down. People they sort of get lost in you know. Professional boxing record as well. He had one loss in Albuquerque. So let's have a little look at his record through the years. He's beat Pat Healy beat him, Jake Shields when he was really young, knocking on 10 years. Well, he's 10 years ago now. But going into the UFC, his debut was in 2009 against Martin Kampmann. That was a split decision loss. Then he beat Jake Ellenberger, Roy McDonald, TKO. So he really got into the UFC around the same time as Roy McDonald, but you know, Carlos were in the WEC for a few years. Dan Hardy got that punch with brutal. I remember watching that. You know, obviously Dan Hardy's from England, so I saw wanting Dan Hardy to win. I like Dan Hardy, even though quite a lot of people don't. I just think he's a pretty cool guy, to be honest with you. And I do like how him and his girlfriend, wife, help put the animals in Vegas. I'm sure it's in Vegas where they live anyway. That was brutal punched out, like whoa, just knocked Dan Hardy clean cold. Dong Hyun Kim, a lovely knee that was, and then he beat Nick Diaz. You know, Nick Diaz, I mean, a lot of people were saying, you know, Carlos was running in that fight, but you know, let's be honest, one thing you don't want to do against Nick Diaz is let Nick sort of pin you up against the cage and land a barrage of body punches and head punches. It's really not the best idea, so I understand why he was sort of getting out of the way using the kicks and everything like that. It was just a good game plan, simple as that. And then he lost against GSP, really good fight that were. Then against Johnny Hendricks, that was an amazing fight. That very good fight that was against Johnny Hendricks. If you have never watched that fight, highly suggest you watch it. And then he beat Martin Kampmann, a really good performance there. So he sort of avenged his first loss in the UFC. An unfortunate injury against Tyron Woodley in their fight. You know, his I think it was ACL. Yeah, it were his ACL from a Woodley takedown. And then he beat Thiago Alves last time out. So against Robbie Lawler, this is just a really good fight. It's really hard for me to sort of choose a winner in this, because there's a part of me that's like, okay, Carlos, he's maybe a better fighter, you know, as in he's got more tools, he's got better movement, he's got a good camp behind him with great game plans. There's that. Then there's Robbie Lawler, who's just this beast. He's a champion now. He's an established champion in my opinion. Great fights he's had. There's a part of me saying, wanting to say Carlos, and then there's another part saying Lawler, but oh god, this is a hard one to predict. I could literally take forever. I'm gonna go with Robbie Lawler. I'm gonna go with Robbie. Just because there's just something about him that seems he won't want to lose. As you know, he seems to have this sort of undying. He won't be beaten in that anymore. You know, he just seems to be in this zone. So I'm going to go with Robbie, even though I know Carlos is very, very, very capable of winning this. So I took a bit of a while predicting these fights. I think I'll do a prediction video for the Dillashaw and Cruz card, UFC Fight Night as well. So I really appreciate you watching this, and I hope you enjoy the fights. And like I said earlier, have a good new year. Take care.